Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Fiber Broadband Association's Fiber for Breakfast. We're now in our 38th episode of 2025. Before we kick off, I'd like to thank Wesco and Gaia, the platinum sponsors of Fiber for Breakfast. Yesterday, the Fiber Broadband Association held a regional Fiber Connect workshop in Spokane, Washington, and it was just another great event. We held interesting discussions on smart farms and tribal broadband and fiber economics and opportunities, and permitting, just to mention a few of the topics. Our next Regional Fiber Connect workshop will be held in Scottsdale on October 16th. And then we'll be in Kansas City on November 11th. And then we'll end the year with our premier member meeting in Palm Springs on December 8th and 9th. Today in Fiber for Breakfast, our guest is Greg Wilson, the CEO of Ripple Fiber, to discuss building an ecosystem to fuel growth and longevity in a highly competitive market. Before I introduce today's guest, I'd like to introduce David Norris of our team, who's going to walk us through some housekeeping items. Last week on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest was our good friend, Jim Stagman, the president and CEO of CostQuest Associates, who had discussed from data deployment to powering smarter broadband decisions. Jim is always a wealth of knowledge, and I enjoy discussing deployment data with him. If you missed last week's session, you can go to our website and watch the replay. Today on Fiber for Breakfast, our guest is Greg Wilson, the CEO of Ripple Fiber, to discuss building an ecosystem to fuel growth and longevity in a highly competitive market. As the founder and chief executive officer at Ripple Fiber, Greg Wilson has over 20 years of telecommunications and business development experience. With an impressive entrepreneurial track record, he can identify business opportunities and validate business models. His ability to solve complex problems and build capable teams ensures his businesses deliver exceptional results. Greg has built multiple telecom infrastructure and software services company, most recently establishing Ripple Fiber as an industry disrupting fiber internet provider headquartered in Charlotte, North Carolina. His strong leadership and passion for fiber technologies inspires the Ripple Fiber team to bring to life his vision for the future of telecommunications. So welcome, Greg. And for our audience, please type in your questions and we'll work those in discussions. With that, I just want to say, Greg, it's really a pleasure to have you on Fiber for Breakfast.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. I appreciate you having me here. You and I have known each other for quite some time now, and Fiber Broadband Association has been a great source of knowledge for me on my journey. So it's great to be able to give back.
So we first met in Cape Town, and so tell me how. Let's start with a little bit about your background. So how'd you get here? You obviously are quite the entrepreneur, done a lot of pretty amazing projects in South Africa and now North America. Can you kind of walk us through your journey to get to Charlotte?
And so going back 25 years, I started my first company, which was an MSP in the South African market, and that was really just starting off really small, doing small companies, networks, and IT infrastructure, and then over the years that morphed into building quite a lot of infrastructure, so building data centers, middle mile networks to connect all these businesses up. Cloud computing way before it was called cloud computing. And then what happened is, there were a couple of entrepreneurs that were looking to roll out fiber to the home. And it was actually built off necessity. So the one fiber to the home provider was actually trying to get security cameras up and running, tried to do it on a wireless backhaul. That didn't work. Decided to put fiber in for those cameras, and then a lot of homeowners said, well, you're putting this fiber in for the cameras all around the suburbs. Why can't we use it for internet? And then sort of parallel to that, there was another entrepreneur who had, had sold that business and, was looking for the next thing and, decided to try residential broadband. So these were effectively untested, technologies in the South African market. And to give some context, South Africa didn't have any cable providers. It was all really our equivalent of the ILEX, just DSL. So there was an urgent need to get something better than DSL. So both of these entrepreneurs, started going with this rollout. I had a look at it and I realized that we had a lot of the components that they need to run these residential broadband networks. We already had the data centers, we had the call centers, the NOCs, all the networking skills to be able to configure the equipment and get it up and running. So we said to them, like, let's partner. For us, we saw it as a B2B relationship. So it was pretty much similar to what we're used to, leveraging a lot of the capacity that we had on the network, and sort of dovetailed well. Business would use the data during the day. Residents would use the broadband on our network at night. And that was the start of quite an interesting journey. I remember I was in the first home in South Africa when fiber went live. And then I remember, trying to really knock away and get it to 1,000 installs a month. That seemed like an impossible task. We overcame that, and now we're doing in excess of 20,000 installs a month. Across our client base. So it's just incredible to see how it scaled. But along that journey, we pivoted with our clients. Made sure that we are continuously innovating in terms of being able to provide them a solid platform to go and roll out fiber. Part of that journey was, on the software side, we realized pretty quickly that if we were doing everything manually, we were never going to be able to cope with the amount of engineering skill set that we would need to be able to configure these networks. And to give you some, insight into the complexity, South Africa is an open access market, and it's very wide from party to party. So there's about 13 different fiber networks, and there's about 140 different retail partners on top of those networks. So and the way that we hand it off was we hand off a layer 2 connection all the way from the ONT to the retail provider. So every single service that's configured, needs the right speed, connected to the right ISP, to the right home. If you don't get that right, you have a pretty grumpy subscriber and retail partner at the end of the day. So the only way we could get that right is really automating that from end to end, all the way from the order processing really to the sunset of a client. And we first went out to market and had a look, was there a platform available that we could just use and implement? We couldn't find anything, so we went into a company called Automation Exchange, and they really looked after all the same clients that we were looking after on the services side, and subsequently being able to expand internationally with that software package. And that was super successful in the market, where it really helped automate the entire journey and give scale to the market. From there, we saw opportunities to start investing in the infrastructure space. So moving out of just services and really owning the fiber. And it was really about plugging niche holes. So we could see there was a gap in the fiber to the business space. Later on, there became a gap in the low income space, and that was really interesting. The whole sort of fiber industry said, we believe there's about 3 million homes that we should roll out fiber to. That's where the affordability is and where we think fiber should go. And as we neared the end of that rollout, we got to a point where we said, well, why can't we roll out fiber into the next wave of homes? There's around another 6 million homes that have got less than $600 a month worth of household income. Can we roll out fiber? Then the initial project was really a test. We didn't know, would people buy it, what price would they buy it out at, and very quickly we picked up that there was a massive need for fiber and bandwidth in these environments. We sort of figured out where our ARPU would land, and then it was back solving from there. How do we make a profitable business model, based on the ARPU, and we could achieve about $20 ARPU in those low income homes. So it was back solving, how do you make that model successful? And there was a lot of innovation from all parties, the manufacturers, the equipment providers, the contractors, us from a software perspective and services perspective in terms of how do we make the whole model more efficient. And lo and behold, we got it to the point where we were able to deliver a similar yield on capital in these low income spaces that we were on the high income space, and it opened up the market for the whole industry by another 6 million homes, and that that rollout is well underway today. With all of those learnings, we started to ask ourselves the question, like, is some of our learnings unique, and is it relevant elsewhere in the world? So we started to look internationally, and we identified a couple of markets, one, the UK market, and two, the US market, as great places for us to operate. So we came into the US. We did a little proof of concept just south of Charlotte here, and that was really just to understand the US market and whether we'd be relevant or not. It was a real learning curve, because I think just after we rolled out, within a month, we got overbuilt by Google Fiber and Windstream. So it was certainly a baptism of fire, where we ended up with 3 fiber providers in one little location, and we really had to go and sell pretty hard to prove that the business model worked. But what we saw is that we really liked the environment in the US. Was difficult and expensive to roll out fiber. In other jurisdictions, some of the incumbents had opened up the infrastructure, which made it a little bit easier and cheaper to roll out. That didn't exist in the US. But essentially, those things that were really difficult early on became moats, later on. It was going to be hard for anybody else to really compete once you had rolled out fiber in an area. And that made for a good investment thesis for us. We believed that our skills and our uniqueness was relevant in the US. And that really propelled us to make the investment and roll out on scale. Along that journey, my partner sat me down for a cheap breakfast and told me that if we're making this investment, I need to move to the US, which was a bit of an interesting discussion for me to have with my family and the wife. But ultimately, my family fully supported, was excited for the adventure of coming to the US. So I moved my family into Charlotte a couple of years ago. And that's really how we got to where we got today. I mean, we came to roll out a scaled business. It wasn't accidental. We wanted to get to millions of homes, and that's what we're busy doing. And made the move, and really enjoying it. Charlotte's a phenomenal city. Family settled in incredibly well, and enjoying the challenge.
Well, you can't ask for a nicer place than Myers Park. Just perfect family community there. So
yeah, absolutely.
Tell me about this.
And for you, the Whitewater Centre is just down the road, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you got everything right there, just uptown, right around the corner, so you could ride your bike over there. Listen, so Greg, you talked about you're able to hone the market or hone your models with an open access market. So how has it been coming to the U.S.? I mean, what are you seeing that's different, better, worse than kind of running the whole show, being the retail provider versus working with other open access retail providers?
Yeah, it's been an interesting change. I think the theory with open access is that you can really focus on rolling out the infrastructure and running the infrastructure well, and then the retail partner comes in and does the sales, client support, and does that really well. I think by being a retail model, which is where the US is predominantly, I think even the wholesale models and that haven't really morphed into full open access yet. They're still really a one-to-one relationship. It swings and roundabouts. So one, there's more to focus on. We now need to have the sales and the support to try and build on the scale that we're going. It's like trying to get a train moving. All the carriages have to move simultaneously, which has been quite challenging. But on the flip side, the advantages have been you can get features and product granularity to the clients a lot quicker. If you think about in an open access market, as an infrastructure provider, you have to first of all contemplate something that you want to deliver to a subscriber. You have to deliver that feature, software, product, services, business procedurally wise, etc. And then you have to convince a retail partner to do the same, which can have quite a big lag. Sometimes it can take 6 months or a year just to launch a new product to the market. But when you're a retail, focused business and you own the infrastructure, you can make those decisions a lot quicker and get those features subscribers a hell of a lot quicker. So I've been enjoying that. It's been really efficient in terms of delivering innovation into the market and trying new things. So I think for us, it's been pretty natural. We were on the retail side as well as the network side in South Africa. So it's just really been bringing those teams and skill sets together and delivering it in one package.
So, I mean, why Charlotte? And from Charlotte, how did you pick the other 8 markets, or the 8 markets you're in so far?
Charlotte's, number one is on the East Coast. So in terms of proximity to South African time zone, it's a good place for us. Number two, with the growth that Charlotte's experiencing and access to talent here, it's been a really good place. There's quite a few telecommunications companies based here. So there was a pool of skills. There's a big banking industry. And then when we've needed to attract talent from outside of Charlotte, I've never had anybody saying they don't want to move to Charlotte. Great, warm, sunny place. Good family environment to bring up families, good schools. It's been pretty easy to attract talent. So yeah, that was really the thinking around Charlotte.
And then now you've expanded to other markets. How did you pick those markets?
So initially, I think it was pretty easy to select markets when we first got going. There was such an insatiable need for fiber. But the market has evolved pretty quickly where, there's a lot of different players vying for territory. So we had to become a lot more data-driven in our approach, really understanding where the opportunities were and the ones that met our business model. Our business model is very different from an ILEC, who's trying to expand initial, has got copper, has got subscribers, and has got a different data set to work from. We're looking for fresh pockets where we can be relevant and feasible within our business model in terms of cost. So we built a data set using, I guess, a lot of the industry available data sets, as well as augmenting with data sets that we created ourselves, and then built some pretty sophisticated algorithms in terms of being able to on the fly work out densities of markets, number of passings within sort of certain cohorts, and working out what meets our business model really well. And what we're able to do is, change aspects of our business model as we get new inputs of data and we see what works well. We can change that and rerun that algorithm within a couple of hours, and it'll spit out where the next best place for us in the whole of the US is to roll out. So it's made us really agile as we're building out our business model, as we learn, and as competition changes in the market, to be able to select markets. So I think the initial intention was to roll out concentrically from North Carolina. We very quickly realized that was possible, but not necessarily the ultimate best pockets of homes to roll out that meet our business model. So we then started expanding a little bit wider, and we're operating in multiple states today that have all got good runway for our rollout.
So what part of your South African business model, our operations, are you leveraging? So is it a lot of the back office still on what you built in South Africa? Or did you start everything here in the US?
No, we're using a lot of our back office in terms of all the skill set to be able to, configure and deploy the network. We've been able to offshore certain functions, some of our engineering work, our service desks, plugging into existing teams that have got, years and years of experience in operating those functions. I think what is also relevant is because the South African fiber market started so early, there were lessons that we learned later on, like how do you become efficient in really small pockets of rollout? Because obviously everybody rolls out the big cities first, and then you sort of go down to smaller and smaller pockets, and then you're trying to figure out, like, how do I make 2,000 passings viable? So we started with those lessons and efficiency from day one in our operating model. So it gave us the agility to be able to go quite wide and be very flexible in terms of how we can pinpoint rollout and go and tackle very small pockets and very niche pockets of homes. And then I think, because the operations, we weren't learning on the fly around how to scale those operations, it's allowed us to attract capital at a different pace and execute at a different pace. I think there see the differences between to America. I think, even on the construction side, while the challenges are different, it's also tough doing the construction. In South Africa, we were dealing with construction labor force issues in terms of them wanting to drive how we rolled out to create more labor versus less labor, those types of things. In the US, it's a little bit different. It's more, dealing with the municipalities. They're trying to protect the infrastructure and make sure we don't damage the infrastructure. So slightly different challenges, but still this innate need to really be able to project manage at a regional level, solve regional challenges, because in every town that you go to, the challenges are different. And how do you scale out, and how do you have the autonomy within your management team to be able to make those decisions on the fly and solve those local challenges? I think that is a lot of what we brought with in our operating model.
So when you looked at your business model, what were your target take rates to kind of get to break even? And what are you seeing? And as you mentioned, you've kind of run into unexpected competition in some of the markets.
I think for us, we largely went with what we see the industry norms here with other players, because that's what the capital providers want to see, right? We think we can achieve higher than what the expected rates are here. It feels difficult that if there's one cable provider and one fiber provider in every home, that you would split that 50-50 with a cable provider, and that's sort of, I guess, the common consensus. But fiber is a far better technology. So I think any person that applies common logic has to get to the decision that fiber is going to outperform cable. It's just a matter of time. But essentially, we break even at somewhere in between 20 and 25% penetration, and we have a phenomenal business model at anything north of 40%, which is what we model on. We consistently achieve those in our older cohorts, and we've got outliers which are far above those sort of take rates. And our model is to go and overbuild cable where there's no fiber. So we're not going into markets that are not competitive. They're very competitive. The cable providers have been coherent. They've been more agile than I expected in terms of going in, discounting, tying people into promotions, those types of things. So it's an all-out fight in the field from a sales perspective, and the model is consistently performing and holding up ARPU. We don't play a price war. We think shine on fiber and just show the stability, the speed, and the latency of fiber and what it brings, and users will start to understand what that actually means for them in their home.
So you offer 3 service levels, 500 meg, gig, and 2 gig. Kind of what's the uptake? What's the most popular, and kind of how are those rolling out?
Yeah, we've been really surprised in terms of people's appetite for speed. So by far, the majority of our uptake is on the gig and higher packages. The 500 meg, I think, fits really well for a cost-sensitive consumer, or maybe doesn't have a huge need, doesn't have a large family, those types of things. We tend to match our packages with what Wi-Fi can deliver, because although we're putting a cable of piece of fiber into the home, most people are consuming it on Wi-Fi. So we watch the Wi-Fi standards, test the Wi-Fi standards very closely, and match our speeds to those packages. So on our Wi-Fi 6E technology, we comfortably able to deliver on that 2 gig promise. Watch the space closely. We'll see some new packages coming out shortly with some new technology there.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited that we finally got off cable, and we have 5 gigs symmetric fiber from Live Oak Fiber. And but I've had to get off the Wi-Fi 6E to fiber to my PC. So it's as you said, you're limited on Wi-Fi. So it's good to kind of be able to have direct fiber to your device. Hey, before I don't want to run out of time without talking about one of my favorite topics is Myriad Masters. So tell us about. I mean, first of all, thank you for having me down to South Africa a couple years ago to join you guys in your big Myriad Masters. But tell us a little bit about what that is and the amazing people that you have there.
Yeah, so we run an annual event. It's a 3-day mountain bike adventure tour. It happens in a different place in South Africa every year. And it was really designed as a way for our clients, our finance partners, our suppliers in the telecommunications industry to bond and have a little bit of time out. It's cycling seems synonymous with people in the telecommunications world because there's not many of our partners that don't cycle, and the few that didn't, I just take them to the bicycle shop and I show them which one to buy, and we get them into the sport pretty quickly. So it's become a phenomenal event. The logistics are huge. Rural place, we're often just a field, and everything is brought in. Generators and tents and all the food, and it really is a 5-star event. There's pro cyclists that organize the routes that we ride. They look after everybody's bicycles, and they'll even do setups for you and help you get your bike fine-tuned. There's chefs that come in and just prepare amazing meals. There's masseuses for after the ride to look after those tired muscles. And we always try and make the event challenging, but not so challenging that it's not obtainable. I think this year we might be stretching that definition. I was looking at the routes, and we're doing 60 kilometers. What is that? About 40 miles, and we're doing 1,200 meters of ascending, which is probably about 4,000 feet of ascending on day one. So it's going to be a pretty difficult ride in some great terrain this year. It's going to be in a game park, so there'll be animals. We're going to keep the lions away for this ride, but everything else will be there. So hopefully people will see some good animals on the ride.
Well, I've done mountain bike races all over, and I'd say the most competitive field is your Myriad Masters. The South African fiber community is a bunch of hammerheads, and they can really ride. So it was a lot of fun being with that group.
Gary, you were holding your own. I remember going up some hills where I was feeling pretty tired, and then I hear this little squeak coming past me, and it's Gary just up every hill, just plows past me, and then I really had to put in a bit of a do or die effort down the hill to overtake you again.
Oh, you're quite the downhiller, so you crushed me on the downhill. So, well, Greg, congratulations on your success so far with Ripple Fiber and everything in Myriad Capital and so forth. Just amazing story, and really glad you're able to join us today. And I hate that I'm going to miss the Myriad Masters, but hopefully I'll be able to join you next year. But thanks again. And for our audience, really appreciate you guys joining us today, and I look forward to getting back together next Wednesday. We're going to have Tom Kamer of AARP, who's going to discuss why fiber is essential to enable older adults to age in place. So you're not going to want to miss that. And we look forward to seeing you guys next week. So thanks, everyone.